Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. I'm your host, Kelsey Wilhelm. Our guest this evening is Maria Helena de Senna Fernandes, the director of the Macau Government Tourism Office. As director of the MGTO since 2012 and with decades of experience in tourism, Senna Fernandes has witnessed Macau's visitor numbers and revenue skyrocket. But now faced with the continued uncertainty from the deadly pandemic, what's next for this city of tourism and leisure? Thank you for being on the show.
Hi, and it's very good to be able to have this time to talk together, and obviously thank you for inviting.
Well, it's definitely a pleasure. I know that TDM has been annoying you a lot recently.
Not really.
It's been an unprecedented year, so it makes perfect sense that we need to be in constant contact with you, and your availability for that has been very gracious. Mm-hmm. This year has been unprecedented, different, and not only has it hit the whole rest of the world, but it's hit Macau at its core.
Right.
It has hit us with our visitation numbers, which are down 85% yearly in terms of 2020, and we're going to continue to see those effects. But we've focused a lot on the negative and the bad of what this has done. It's hard not to. But can you say that there are any positive takeaways that you've seen over the past year because of what has happened?
Well, I think to a certain extent, if we recall in 2019, we were always talking about that there were too many tourists.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are complaining that roads are getting congested. Particularly in certain parts of town, we are having too many people around, and we had to do a lot of controls, especially on the peak days. Mm-hmm. And we had to come up with applications to actually let people know, okay, how many people are in that particular time at a certain time of the day, and to avoid certain places. And we had to do a lot of those kinds of things to, just to get people away from the crowded zones. Obviously now it's a complete different ballgame. Yeah. We went from 100,000 entries in terms of visitations per day to, I think recently, between 18 to 20 something thousand a day, which is a very big difference. And we were able to do that because we were able to contain and also to control the city very well and make the city safe. At its lowest, it was about 200 people a day. So I guess we are learning something different and we're seeing that, okay, we've enjoyed many years of having very high tourist numbers. And now we're seeing that, okay, now that tourism numbers have gone low, we are asked to have an introspect for ourselves and look back at, okay, exactly where should we be heading? Or we need to develop more industries, we need to do a lot of other things differently. So I guess it's also a very good way to, a wake-up call for all of us to look back and see we've really been very lucky to be able to enjoy so many years of good tourism. And now we're asked to, we're given a test, we have to rise to the occasion. And I think this is, to a certain extent, this is also positive in that it makes us not feel that we are so lucky all the times. And we need to really beef ourselves up, and we need to learn more skills, and we need to also be able to think things differently. Also, there are positives in that. When we did the local tours, the local travel agencies are more willing to come up with different products. Back in the old days, I think we've always complained that we've had the same kinds of tours for more than a few decades. They have not really changed in nature, but then all of a sudden, because of the pandemic and because we want to, we need to do some tours for locals in order to get the tourism industry running again, they've actually looked at it, given a very deep look at it, and came up with new products. So I guess there's always a silver lining somewhere. And the thing is, you really need to look at it and to find the best out of it. So now, obviously, the city is less crowded. We have some new things coming in all the time. People tend to stay longer. I mean, the tourists themselves. And so, well, we'll have to make do with all the positives.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year to see how this is all going to progress, because we have gradually opened up to the mainland since August, and then more so in September. And then there was even kind of letting some non-residents back in starting from December 1st under very, very specific circumstances. So at least, you know, our bread and butter market is there. Hong Kong, it looks like it's going to be a long way off.
It's, I must say I'm rather frustrated about that for some time. We were almost there. We were thinking that we can reopen the Hong Kong market by July, August last year. But then everything went back, and then recently even more acute. And so I'm now really looking at only the China market. I mean, the mainland China market at this point. All the rest are, well, I would say would be bonus for us. So now we have to look at the mainland market, and to be honest, looking at the mainland market, we used to look at it as one homogeneous market. But in fact, there are many different kinds of reasons for different peoples from different provinces to come. So we just have to look at each province differently and work out the markets differently as well. So we you know, unlike before, it's also, you know, very much a test to us as to how safe and also how attractive Macau can be to different peoples within the mainland China.
You know, that must have been really difficult, because Macau has been the city of tourism and leisure. That has been the go-to phrase for it. But then we've also kind of evolved into the idea of Macau being the safe city for people to come visit. Where do you think this is going to evolve to next? I mean, obviously, choosing a brand for Macau can be multifaceted, but how exactly should Macau be branding itself for this year?
Well, I think for this year, and maybe for some time, you know, going forward, so it all depends on how the world will evolve. Being a safe city seems like the catchword at this point in time. Before, it's just, you just, when we do marketing, you just need to tell people, oh, we have all this, we are the city of gastronomy, we have the UNESCO, we have also the UNESCO branding in terms of World Heritage, we have all this, you know, nice things, good hotels and whatever. But now it seems that people's priorities are different. So you have to work on people's priorities as well. You have to also adapt yourself. And also one thing which is really giving us, I guess, you know, a heads up also is that because we are able to reopen our borders with mainland China, that gives us really ahead, you know. Well, somehow or other we're ahead of many places because we're able to work that market at least, you know, at this point in time.
And it's a big market.
It is a big market. It is now the biggest market in terms of outbound tourism anywhere in the world. And I must say that, you know, it has been our bread and butter market for a long time. Before the pandemic, you know, we're talking about 70% of our visitors actually come from the mainland. Now numbers are smaller, but still the weight of it is very strong. So we have to work it out very well. We have to actually also go deeper. We want the visitors to come, and not just come, but also to stay and also spend. So it's really now we need to make Macau more known to them. We need to let them know what they can do here for a couple of days, not just come and go. And so this is also a way for us to let people go deeper into our own, you know, identity. And they can spend time at the hotels, but at the same time they can go into the very different zones that we're trying to also give different identities to different areas of town, and they can find places that, you know, to spend time on, and also to things that they can do and things that they can enjoy in Macau that probably they cannot, you know, in the mainland.
It seems like, yeah, Macau has been able to market itself in various ways, through the events such as the Macau Grand Prix, through obviously very glamorous sites such as the Cotai Strip and things like that. But the hotels themselves, let's say particularly the integrated resorts, because of their scale and the fact that they used to attract so many people, how has that interaction been over the course of this? Because obviously in February of last year we had the unprecedented shutdown of the casinos for 2 weeks, which was at the time
unheard of.
It was a gamble. It was a
Right.
gamble because we didn't know what was going to happen, and it was
Yes.
completely unheard of. They've had a tough time. They've also laid off a lot of people. What has their interaction been with the MGTO so far about how to have everybody get back on their feet?
Well, I must say that businesses in the tourism industry, big and small, we've stuck together. Looking at the project that the Macau Ready Go local tours, it would not have been possible without all of them actually chipping in. It's not obviously we have the 3 travel agencies associations, taking the lead in terms of putting the product together and pulling together the tour guides, the booking system, and all that. The thinking about new products. But the products would not have been possible without the chipping in of the big concessionaires as well. They also contributed to a lot of new things. Say, for example, things like going into the looking at the rooms. That's something unheard of before. So they opened up all their very big suites as tours for local people. They've also opened up the back of the house. Letting people into the House of Dancing Water, but not looking at the show itself, but actually what happens behind the scenes. And then there's also obviously new products that we're able to do. So it's a very, very interesting experience altogether. And I must say that, and I also thank all of them, because without that kind of solidarity, without that kind of understanding of each other, and that openness to work together, you won't be able to come up with all these products for our locals. And some of these products will now also gradually be translated into products for the mainland market to start with, and then eventually for other markets as well.
Yeah, I was hearing with the Macau Ready Go tours already, they were thinking, okay, we can take these and we can apply them. If they're so fascinating to locals who basically live with it every day, of course we should be able to sell this somehow.
Yeah, true. And well, we've been working on things like the boat tours, for a long time. I think about 2 years already, and then obviously not getting a lot of mileage out of it, until now. But then all
nautical
of a sudden,
miles?
Yeah?
Nautical miles?
Yes, exactly, nautical miles. But then when we got to the local tours, interestingly, a lot of people actually wanted to get on the boat tours. So that gives us something new, a different angle, and then that also helps us to improve the product. And very soon, our friends at the Maritime and Water Bureau, they are also going to put up what we call a new pier, a small pier at the Ama area, where actually people can. That was something that we always asked them, and they were trying to put together how to do it. And finally, I think in the first quarter of this year, we might be looking at a small pier at the Ama area, and people can actually disembark there. And why do we want that new place, new pier? It's because it actually echoes with our history, and so you can imagine doing the boat tour and getting off the little boat at Ama Temple area and then visiting the temple. So that also comes in with our history, and I think although we have a pandemic, yes, we're still we're still not rid of it yet. But then there's all this creativity that also allows us to see new things come in.
I know that a lot of the activities that have been offered, say for example, they might be at a lower price than they would have been before.
Yes.
And that does make it more accessible for the local population.
True.
Obviously, a lot of the people coming in here have more spending power than some of the locals.
True.
At the same time, you're coordinating a campaign to try and bring in tourists by also offering them types of coupons and discounts and things like that. Do you think that either of those programs, either offering discounted options for locals and also offering coupons and discounts for tourists, do you think those will have to continue throughout the rest of this year?
Well, at this point in time, I think we are for the local tours have stopped as of October last year. But then the coupons that we are looking at right now would go until we will still give out coupons until the end of probably around the end of February.
Okay.
For non-locals. So we're looking at them to use these coupons within 60 days after they've got the coupons. So they can redeem them at 45 days and then use them within 60 days. So we are hoping that, within also the first quarter until April, we will have, gradually also make it more conducive for our mainland visitors to come here and also restart and help us restart tourism as well. Because I think still we are quite, some way away from what we used to enjoy in terms of tourism. We might not be able to get back to those levels for a long time, but still I think the good news is that with all this, we're seeing more spending, we're seeing more people more willing to stay longer. And with them staying longer, of course, they will be able to benefit more factions of our tourism industry. So we'll look at it that way, and then we'll also tweak our different campaigns as we go along.
Obviously, we've had recent news just this week. We had the new case that occurred in Zhuhai.
Yes.
We did have the returnee case, which came on the flight from Tokyo.
Right.
How exactly does that affect your guys' plan? It seems like every time there's a new, because almost daily we're getting changes towards the list of regions that are required quarantine.
True.
And seeing as that's our only market, if we're just kind of knocking pieces off of the board, it doesn't leave as many pieces as before. Do you guys have to wake up every morning and come up with a new strategy and say, okay, well, that province is gone? How does that work?
Well, I think over the last months, ever since we reopened the borders with the mainland, we have been doing a lot of adaptations every now and then, because we know the pandemic is not yet over. We have to always keep an eye as to, all right, which places are safe according to the Health Bureau, and we also do our plans. Well, we do plans, but then at the same time we are also very much attentive to what's happening, and we will reevaluate every plan. And now the planning cycle has become very, very short. You would know that on the end of September we put together a promotion in Beijing, in the heart of Beijing. In fact, that only took us record speed, 5 weeks to put all that together. That would be unheard of before. So that's why I think right now we are always trying to find new ways to do things. We do offline, but at the same time we do a lot of things online. So I guess now being flexible is kind of the catchphrase that we're used to be every day. And it will go along. And I think that, with the pandemic also developing in different places all around the world, and also some pockets here and there within the mainland, we have no choice. We have to be very, very flexible.
Yeah. It's interesting to see the number of visitors that came specifically from Zhuhai, and then trying to see, okay, if there are that many visitors coming from Zhuhai, how many people are actually coming from further abroad, from Guangdong and from further abroad. But there's repeatedly been the idea of doing multi-destination tourism.
Yes.
And Hengqin has been one of the main points of how that can be carried out.
Right.
I'm wondering, do you think that as it had to accelerate the way that the MGTO does things, do you think that that's also accelerating this multi-destination tourism option? Is that something that will be possibly pushed more throughout this year?
Well, when we look at multi-destination tours, back before, we were always, or we're mostly, talking about people coming from abroad, coming to our region, and then going around different destinations within our region. But
that's
now,
not possible right now.
That's not possible right now. So what we have to look at, and in fact, this is also an option which we started to explore with our neighbors. I mean, within the Greater Bay Area some years ago, not just now. But I think what we're now going to do is we'll accelerate that idea of selling our region, the Greater Bay Area, to other places within the mainland.
Okay.
If you're a visitor from Shanghai, Beijing, or even Hangzhou or whatever, why not come to the Greater Bay Area? You can enjoy Macau, Hangzhou, or even Shenzhen, or so there are many combinations that you can do, and there is quite a lot of differences within our products as well. So it's just a matter of how we can make the region as a whole more interesting and more conducive for people to visit. So there's quite a lot of work to do. Recently, the chief executive brought us to the 8 cities within the Greater Bay Area within 4 days. Obviously, I'm not asking tourists to do that, but then it's always possible to do different combinations within the Greater Bay Area, and there is actually enough tourism product, and there are lots of things that we don't even know at this point. So we are planning also. Has to be after Chinese New Year and has to be when things are a little bit more settled. We are thinking of bringing our own travel agencies into the Greater Bay Area again to look at different products and see eventually what are the combinations, what are the new products that we can work together with the Greater Bay Area, but then with an eye to what other provinces in the mainland, what their visitors would like to see.
Okay. That'll be interesting to see, especially since they've had this year to retool and have to come up with new options and new products and new routes. It'll be interesting how they can apply that across the 11 cities.
True.
I have to ask it. We're coming up on Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, starting on the 12th of February.
Right.
Obviously, during this same period last year, the casinos were closed. So we had a completely different experience last year. I know you'd mentioned something about maybe 70–80% hotel occupancy. What are your expectations? What are your expectations for the overall visitation, and do you actually want to see a large number of tourists?
I don't think it would be realistic to think that we will have a lot of tourists over Chinese New Year. Definitely not what we used to have.
Yeah.
We might be looking at this point in time, we are averaging around between 18,000 to around 21,000, a day during the month of January. I hope it will be slightly better, during Chinese New Year, at least to be over 20,000, Probably, my feeling is that it can be a little bit less than Christmas because it seems we've enjoyed a very good Christmas.
Yeah.
New Year's Eve was like the first time last year in about 11 months that we hit 30,000 visitors a day. So it's I just hope that Chinese New Year can give us some days of good news. But with so many provinces asking their residents not to move out of town, it will not be a very easy thing to achieve.
Yeah.
But we might be looking at better days after Chinese New Year because it seems like, last year we had National Day holiday. Everybody was very, was expecting a very big surge of visitors. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
In actual fact, after the National Day, there were more tourists coming in.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So, so probably we have to relook at the entire scenario. What used to be golden weeks might not be so golden. So we might be looking at other possibilities, during the year. And it seems like, things will get better in spring. Everybody's talking about that at this point. As long as it gets warmer, seems like seems like people or the virus goes into hibernation somehow in
Hopefully
warm
it just
weather.
leaves forever.
That's all I hope as well. Yes, but I think we are in. I do think that there will be people coming for Chinese New Year. I do hope that they stay longer, and seems like the hotels are feeling that there should be enough guests for them. Say for example, we understand that the Sheraton is also not doing quarantine, will not serve as a quarantine hotel during Chinese New Year period. So there seems like some optimism out there. So I just hope that we also get more visitation during that time.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. One thing that's going to be happening already in the beginning of February is the GGCT, the Tourism Crisis Management Office, is finally going to be moving officially under the MGTO.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask about that. It's been such an interesting year for the GGCT. They've had to handle so many things.
True.
And a lot of questions, which sometimes are very relevant and sometimes I'm sure are not very relevant. Can you, pointing at that, what would you say the GGCT is most proud of having achieved during this past year?
Well, there is a lot that GGCT has done during the past year. Obviously there has been very long days, very long nights as well. There has been a lot that we've learned, but I can safely say that we're very proud of every operation that we have put out, that we have done so far. Mm-hmm. Everybody can remember obviously the first operation which we did was going to Japan for the Diamond Princess, mm-hmm. Picking up our residents. Finally, 3 of them came back to Macau.
That feels like a decade ago.
Yes, that was in February last year, almost a year ago. Everybody was very, very fidgety about that, mm-hmm. And then obviously after that we had to do the charter plane for Wuhan, and mm-hmm. then the bus from Hong Kong, picking all the residents,
buses, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then afterwards in June, July, we did the boat operation, and then recently, of course, we were also called to help coordinate the action, the commercial flight from Air Macau. Mm-hmm. So I guess I can say that all in all, we only have, including the driver and also the tea lady, 10 people in GGCT, not counting myself as the coordinator because I'm kind of like part-time in GGCT. But with that number of personnel, I guess we did actually achieve quite a lot. But I must also thank a lot of other people's, Macau Government Tourism Office, my own office as well, because whenever there's a big operation, we also ask our own staff to help out the GGCT staff as well. And then, of course, the police, the health bureau, the airport, and the civil aviation side and the airlines. And I must also say that, this last year as a whole, we also struck a very good relationship with Hong Kong, mm-hmm. Particularly the airport of Hong Kong, as well as the Transport Bureau, as well as the Airport Authority in Hong Kong. Without them, we won't be able to mount a lot of these operations. So mm-hmm. It's been a very, very steep learning curve. We have to learn a lot of things, within a short period of time. But so far, I guess, we have risen to the occasion at least, so that makes me proud.
It's interesting you say that about Hong Kong, because I do remember some very unilateral actions that were taken by the Hong Kong government, and Macau was then forced to react in a way. Looking forward, we had the Macau Grand Prix, which happened last year. Mm. We've had to obviously cancel the majority of the festivities for the Lunar New Year. Do you think that we're going to have any period where we can start to get back to that normalcy in terms of the events? And going forward, should Macau only be concentrating on the mainland as its audience for these events? Is that the most practical thing to do?
Well, I think that for the immediate future, there's no other market that you can look at. Yeah. So it is really a reality. You have to face reality. You have to make do with whatever you can. Mm-hmm. So the mainland market will be a very important market for some time. But eventually, as things start to open up, and I hope soon, then we have to start looking at where is the next step. Yeah. And that will be an assessment according to the preparedness of each destination as to how well the virus is being controlled, and also how many people have been vaccinated. So there's a lot of things that we still need to learn about. And I must confess that a lot of these things we don't have any experience yet. Yeah. So we have to learn as we go along. But for sure, I think that it's always our objective or our mission to promote Macau to a wider audience rather than just the mainland. Mm-hmm. But we have to look at our bread and butter at this point in time. So we cannot realistically look at the others. As for even within the mainland, as I said, it's not just one market. We have to look at it more deeper. We have to also look at what attracts different provinces, people from different provinces, and how they actually receive information, and how we're able to give them something that makes them feel that they would like to come to Macau. Mm-hmm. So there's still a lot of work there to do, and eventually there's another question as to how or when we will be able to reopen tours with the mainland.
Yeah.
So that is also another area which obviously, particularly the travel agencies, the tour guides, the tour bus drivers would like us to work on. We've actually started working on that last year, not forthcoming yet, but then we will, as far as we know, our entire government will be, continuing, to work on that, going forwards.
You know, there's an interesting distinction right now in between the people who are allowed into the mainland and those who are not. There are certain people in Macau who would like to go to the mainland, but they're not allowed to.
Right.
Do you think that that's going to change, given that we're in such a unique situation,
right.
given that we have been so protected because of the measures that were put into place by our government? Do you think that there is reason to believe that some of these residents could be able to go to China within the near future, within the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, to be honest.
Yes.
So it's very difficult to say. But as we say, there's no harm, working on it. So I guess it's really we have to continue to show how safe Macau is. That's for sure. And then by building that confidence, then we can look at how we can step by step ask for a little more. Everybody is learning new things. I guess we are learning new things as well as, at the same time, across the board, they are also learning new scenarios every day. So I guess it's a matter of time, and it's also a matter of, having the confidence to safely reopen borders, more wider.
In terms of vaccination, unfortunately, we're getting to the end of our time. It always goes much quicker than it seems.
Right.
And I have so many more questions to ask. But in terms of vaccination, there was a point at which we were talking about Hong Kong, reopening up with Hong Kong if there had been a certain number of days without cases. As we're seeing the vaccination programs get rolled out throughout different countries and even in neighboring Hong Kong, we've got the expectation that it'll start happening for us in the first quarter. Do you think that if people are vaccinated, they will then be allowed into Macau regardless of the destination, of where they're coming from, of which place?
Well, at least from what I heard until now, it doesn't seem to just work that simply. Because a vaccine is a vaccine, but it doesn't say, it doesn't prove that you are not infected.
Yeah.
So I would tend to believe that the tests that are being imposed right now will still be imposed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure as to what extent the quarantine can be dispensed. At this point, I guess there are still a lot of questions.
Yeah. Just shifting from 14 to 21 days and then another 7 days observation
right,
period
exactly.
was a big
so I guess there's still a lot of unknown at this point in time. How well the vaccines are, there is still too little data to prove that, as to how safe even with the vaccine, people can be. So there is still a learning curve there. Well, we have to respect science. So until scientifically they can prove to be safe enough, for people to travel freely, until then, I think there will still be quite some controls, unfortunately.
It seems like it's a year that's going to continue with much uncertainty, and I'm just lucky to be the person asking the questions and not having to handle everything that you have on your plate. Thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for all of your help in trying to move people around, get people back, and keep Macau on its feet through all these difficult times.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you back under better circumstances.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all for this evening. Join us again next week for more TDM Talk Show. Good night.